The world puts so much pressure on us to constantly achieve greatness, but sometimes life is slow and we have a lack of motivation or ideas, or we feel like we're not good enough. And in a digital world, it's so easy to run and find inspiration and fill our heads with noise. But sometimes what feels like fuel is the very thing that's slowing us down. Hi, I'm Sophia. Welcome to Touching Grass, your digital escape from all of the noise online. This podcast is all about dissecting social media rhetoric to give you a little bit more grounded take and explore the human experience. Last week, I really didn't want to post a podcast episode. I had my ideas all written out. I had my plan, my schedule for what I was going to be posting, but I just didn't feel motivated. I didn't have a spark of inspiration, but I had promised myself that I would post every Tuesday, so I decided that I wanted to keep that promise to myself. It can be hard growing something from nothing and feeling like you're exciting enough to be worth listening to. In last week's episode, I talked about having to move back home with no direction after experiencing the time of your life somewhere new, and how it can feel like you're going backwards or like you're a failure for taking a pause to figure out what your next steps are going to be. And sometimes in those moments, you're waiting for inspiration and you can feel like you're drowning trying to find that. Once I was done filming that episode, I was thinking about this creative slump that I feel like I'm existing in right now. And then all of a sudden, it kind of hit me. I'm constantly trying to get to this new exciting point of my life and feeling like I need to constantly be growing so fast. But at what point did we decide that success can only look like speed? And it made me realize something, that a lot of us start to treat our own lives in the way that we look at success within capitalism. Technology makes us want everything fast, and capitalism rewards productivity. And we have started to live our lives in the same money-making idea that our time is money. Therefore, we need to fill it constantly and constantly find inspiration and find a quick solution to just boost productivity in our life, because otherwise we aren't being successful. It makes us feel like pausing is a waste of time because we could have been filling it with something more useful to get us more ahead in life or in our career. And this leads us to feel like a creative slump or writer's block or a lack of inspiration is something bad. So instead of sitting in that discomfort of not having an idea or feeling unmotivated and using that to fuel us, instead, we go and try and find a quick solution, and we run to things like social media or AI to inspire us, to fill us with new ideas, hoping that that in return will spark something within us. And this isn't just about art or podcast or content creation. It's about every aspect of our life that requires a goal or coming up with a new idea, that we go out and seek the easy way out to discover it. Success has never come from the easy way out, so why have we trained our brains to seek ease? Think about it. When was the last time that you decided to paint without finding inspiration on Pinterest first? When was the last time you hosted without running to TikTok to find a theme for your get-together? When was the last time you problem solved without asking ChatGPT first? When did you sit in that discomfort and not just seek an easy solution? We're so used to noise that silence feels like failure. We're so used to speed that slowing down feels like going backwards. We're so used to being served thoughts and ideas that when we create room in our brain for our own, we confuse that empty space for a lack of innovation, for a lack of ideas. Research is important, but don't mistake that for originality. Inspiration is helpful, but there is a line. The more noise you fill your head with, the harder it will be to hear your own thoughts. Don't make your creativity fight for a spot in your head. Because we have this temptation to feel like when we don't have ideas, we should just find inspiration to find something. But maybe true creativity doesn't come from inspiration, it comes from running out of ideas. Currently, people run to Pinterest or TikTok or AI for inspiration, whether that is for art or just for thinking in itself. Even something as simple as just writing an email. People want to now find the perfect language to connect with another person. But that takes a little bit of our humanity out of it when everything is taken from a machine or taken from somebody else, because it's no longer your voice and it's no longer you they're truly connecting with. And maybe it's the struggle to come up with an idea that allows us to create something out of nothing, and it's the very thing that also makes us human and that has allowed us to progress to this point that we exist in right now. And this does make me curious about what the future is going to become, because I think we can all admit that people are becoming more and more reliant on AI. And I'm not saying that there aren't any benefits to AI. Of course, there are certain things that it can make us more efficient at. So I'm not one of those people who's saying every single thing about it is bad. But I do think a lot, especially with the youngest generation, because for me personally, I'm 24. So I learned a lot of skills growing up that I already have. And that allows me to use AI in a more responsible way. But especially online, I hear the youngest generation that is still in middle school, still in high school, and they feel the need to use it for everything. They can't even write an essay in school anymore by themselves. They want the easy way out, like we talked about, just writing it with AI. And there's all these fundamental skills that people slowly start to lose, which makes us more dependent on AI the more we lose our own abilities. And like I said, there are certain things that AI helps with. For example, coding. A lot of coders nowadays use AI, but there's still a human behind that who understands what the code is doing and what it needs. But when you don't feel the need to have any understanding because you think AI is going to do everything for you, it makes us less innovative. It makes us have less knowledge. And in a way that makes us less human and then more dependent on the software, which just continues the cycle to become deeper and deeper. AI also isn't actually creative, right? AI is taking ideas from somebody else. So it's not really original. It's grabbing from what exists and putting something together from that. I think there's always going to be people who are thinking and developing, but I do think that the more reliant we become, there is going to be a smaller group of people who are truly doing the innovating. And I think obviously there are only a few people who are creating innovations that are so grand that they push society forward in general. But with AI, I do think that amount is going to become smaller and smaller. There will only be a very small amount of creators and everybody else is going to be the ones running the technology. But this comes with a lot of different dangers. First off, obviously, job-wise, you do need to learn how to work the technology, but also the less knowledge you have, the easier you are to influence and the easier you are to be manipulated. Knowledge in this life is so incredibly important. And while people think little things like, oh, who cares about writing or all of these classes, why do I need to know all of this stuff when I can just look it up on the internet? But knowledge is power. People have said that over and over again, but it is so true. The easiest people to manipulate are people who are not using critical thinking skills and do not have deep knowledge. So it's not just about jobs and the environment, but it's also who we are as a society is going to completely change if people feel like they don't need to continue to upkeep their own knowledge and education. So when you don't want to learn or create on your own, ask yourself, do I simply want to be the person who's running the machine? Or do I want to be the person who knows how to make the machine run? And the ability to think comes from the ability to sit in the unknown, to focus on gaining knowledge and not simply speed. True innovation does not come from speed. Where we are today in society is a compilation from so many generations before us, the compilement of knowledge. That's not speed, that's building up on foundations until we get to something so much higher. Because good ideas come from trial and error. It comes from sitting in discomfort. It comes from problem solving and navigating the information that you do have available to you. And true creativity, innovation, and ideas, it takes time. And it takes sitting with it, just like it does with your heaviest emotions. If you're someone who actually sits and feels your emotions and you're not someone who runs from them, you'll understand that when you go through something that's very big and very heavy, you have to sit with those emotions before you truly understand them. Sometimes you just sit in a feeling before you can understand the root cause, before you can navigate it, before you can understand it and move on from it and know where to place that emotion in order to grow as a person. And it's the same whether it's building something more technical like a business or a computer program or even art. You need to sit with the original idea or data no matter how messy. Data, for example, the raw numbers can be very messy and you have to organize it and navigate it. and start to clean it until you can actually figure out what the message is behind those numbers. It takes stepping away from it and taking a break and then returning and looking at it so that you can see the bigger picture and see all the underlying messages that lie within it. Everyone on the internet has access to these same ideas, so to distinguish yourself, you need to understand the difference between using a tool and relying on it. Our generation has forgotten what boredom is. We run from it like it's trying to hurt us, but maybe it's trying to save us. If we step away from our phones and create more than we consume, maybe we'll find a version of ourselves that we thought only existed in others. So write an essay by yourself. Go on a trip without posting it. Make an opinion without checking what everyone else thought first. Sit in the discomfort of your thoughts instead of draining it with 15-second long videos. Start to loosen your reliance on your phone and social media and everything that feeds you all of this noise. Because we have started to skip the most important part of the human process, running our ideas through AI before we've fully formed them ourselves, allowing people online to diagnose our emotions before we've really allowed ourselves to feel them. Why can't we sit in the discomfort of figuring ourselves out? Sometimes you need to cut off toxic friends to make new ones. Sometimes you need to leave a job to get a better one. And sometimes you need to clear your head before you have the room for new ideas. Because this idea I'm talking to you about, it didn't come from a spark. It came from emptiness. It came from discomfort, from a lack of emotion, but also discipline. I was waiting for my spark to come back when all of a sudden I found myself typing these words on a screen. And from that, something appeared. Not from a TikTok, not from a reel, not from a machine. It came from allowing myself to try something and just see what happened, even if it was bad, even if I didn't want to, even if I felt like I had nothing to say. It was almost like an idea came when I finally stopped looking and I just started feeling. And I'm not saying just sit doing nothing and the world will fall in your lap, but what I am saying is that when you give yourself a pause, it allows you the space to come up with something new. You can type even when you have nothing to say. You can create even if it's bad. You can study something that you don't understand, and you can become good at something that you thought you were always bad at. The combination and contrast of pause and discipline is what creates greatness. Always choose discipline over motivation. You can't wait to be inspired to start working on something. But that's exactly what the lack of inspiration is for. It's meant to be explored. Because discipline is not about always having an idea. It's about the ability to sit in the discomfort of not knowing, to discover something new. It's not creating even when it's bad and using inspiration but not relying on it. It's about sitting in the nothing, because that is where you find the thought worth sharing and the idea worth hearing. It's about slowing down enough to see an opportunity passing by, but the discipline to catch it so that it doesn't run past. So start learning to turn off that damn phone just like your parents told you. Speed and excitement have its moments, but so does pausing. Like a slingshot, maybe these moments where you feel like you're going backwards are the exact pull that you need to be pushed forward. I want to thank you guys for listening to this episode of Touching Grass. I would love to hear your guys' take on this topic and just your opinion on all these technological changes that are happening in society. But I post every Tuesday. Once again, my name is Sophia, so until next time.